Hey, Jamie, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. Would you just mind introducing yourself to our listeners real quick and let them know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am Jamie Van Cuyk, and I am the owner of Growing Your Team, where we work with small business owners to help them gain the confidence to hire like a pro. So when I say small business owners, I mean everywhere from that micro business. So it's just you and you're looking to hire your very first employee, whether full time or part time, all the way up to our average business that we work with has about 20 or fewer employees. We do occasionally go larger than that, but we're really about helping those really small businesses build their first and early stage teams. That way they can be successful and keep growing and growing from there.
Love it. And I have to admit that as a small business owner myself and somebody who serves them, this was the hardest thing I think in my business journey to figure out is like you don't get a letter in the mail, you don't get an email, you don't get an alert on your phone that's like it's time to hire someone. You just have to know. And we almost all get it wrong in terms of we
Yes.
all wait too long. I find we all wait way too long to unlock that next level of our business. And I think, what do you think holds people back from growing their team a little bit earlier than they do?
Yeah. So, well, first off, especially as women business owners, some of the things that really hold us back is we're used to kind of doing it all. It's like, give it to me, I can handle it. And we're afraid to say, I can't handle it because sometimes we look at that as a sign of something's wrong because I can't handle it versus I've grown this business to the level that I can't handle it. And it's a positive thing that I cannot handle it all anymore. So sometimes just like the way we work and operate as women in general makes it so we resist asking for help. And then the other
Yeah, I
things
agree.
is financial. We're looking at there's a cost to bringing someone in. We sometimes fear that our revenue is going to go up and down. And what happens if I give someone a job and then I have to take it away? And we look at that cost and we're like, ooh, am I there yet? Let me get a little bit more of a buffer. Let me build my revenue a little bit more. And we really worry about that cost. And the other thing is our businesses are our babies. We built them. We're doing things. Sometimes we are literally the face of our business. People buy our business and buy our services and buy our products because of us. And now we have to trust someone to produce things or help us out that doesn't impact our personal brand. It doesn't impact our clients. And that can be really scary.
I agree. And it's something that it definitely held me back. It holds my clients back all the time. I don't know anybody who didn't struggle with delegation and struggle with, being able to relinquish control of what they had built. It really is like you're building this thing in the image of what you want and designing it the way you want to, and almost painting a work of art, leave it, and then it's unfinished, and you're like, here, take the paintbrush and do what you want with it. That's how it feels. And you're like, but
Do
this
what
is
you
my
want
work.
with it, but do it exactly as I want it done.
Exactly. Do as you want with it, but you better have the exact image in your head that I have in my head of what this is supposed to look like. And that is the biggest thing, especially I'm an Enneagram 3. I'm kind of a control freak and I'm fully aware of it. And it's one of those things. So I think especially for women, we have this idea that we have to do it all, or we at least have to plan it all, or we have to design it all, and we have to give all of the guidance. And it's a lot of pressure. And I just think that holds people back as well. When it comes to delegation, though, if you don't delegate and you do try to take that all on your own, that's a huge impact, right? And
Oh,
what
yes.
can that be? What can that look like in a business if you're, keeping that control for too long?
Yeah. So the first thing that I think we really need to talk about is the burnout. There's only so
Oh
much
yeah.
you can really do as a business owner. There's only so much energy you have, so much time. And if you're refusing to delegate, you're going to burn out. And this looks differently to different people. It could be that maybe you're just more short tempered at home with your significant other, or if you have kids or things like that. You're not taking care of your physical health. You're not sleeping. You're ready just to throw in the towel when something goes wrong because you're just like, oh, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. So we get into that stage and we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not equipped to handle any stressors or anything that come in our business. So we're real quick to throw in the towel and say this isn't working. And then
Yeah.
some of the other things is you really limit your growth potential. You only have so much capacity, which means you can only take on so much work. which means you can only earn so much revenue. We can't just keep increasing our prices again and again and again. Like, yeah, we need to be able to charge what we're worth, but there comes a ceiling for a lot of the times that we can't charge more than that because we only produce so much. There's only so many people that can buy at a certain level, only so many people that will trust us if we go above a certain threshold with our dollars. So the only way to keep growing your business and earning more revenue is to get more help on your team so you can increase your capacity. And so there's a lot of things there where it's like you can do more with your business and you can be more relaxed and focused and properly focused on your business when you get help.
Yeah. And I find that you can then get more done in particular areas too, because you can focus on the right things. I go through these seasons as the leader of my company. I go through seasons of, hey, I'm in an acquisition season, or I'm in an operations season, or I'm in a fulfillment season where I'm like heavily involved in the client work. And then I hired people, train them, and I'm like, cool, now I can like back off of the fulfillment a little bit and I can focus on acquisition. That has been so empowering to be able to then say, okay, like you guys are good. Cool. The kids are babysat, right? And then it's like, I can go over here now and do something else because like that's covered. It's the greatest feeling knowing that you have a team that will help you. But it looks very different though when you're delegating to, like, let's say, I think a lot of business owners listening would agree that delegation is important and they're probably open to the idea of delegation, but they're thinking about delegating to a VA, delegating to a graphic designer, or somebody who's going to be very tactical and very, like, we'll say technical skill that is very that's applied very specifically, right? So you're okay hiring contractors that do XYZ, that fulfill a certain role, but it's a huge challenge. And I found this too, when you're hiring people who are going to basically have to read your mind and have to apply more strategic role. Talk to me about that. Like, what does that look like and how is that different?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So glad you brought that up because first off, there are so many people I talk to. They're like, oh, I never want to have a team. I never want to hire. And then you learn that they have a whole slew of contractors that they're working with for their business. And it's like, that still is a team. Yes, they don't work for your business. They're a business that you're hiring to do work, but you're still delegating. You're still overseeing their work and managing deadlines. You're still managing relationships. You're still trusting other people. So you don't have the responsibility of an employee, but you still have the responsibility of a team. And so we need to say that no one's out there really doing everything themselves, but you're bringing people on in different capacity. And sometimes contractors is fine. But as you talked about, like there's this tactical executional work. And sometimes we're really good at delegating that, especially the work that's the tactical execution work that doesn't involve our clients at first, where it's just all that behind the scenes thing. So the bookkeeping, the marketing, all those things that make our business function, but it's not the client work. So we still feel in control of the client work. And then sometimes we start to delegate the client work too, but it might be the behind the scenes client work. It's the stuff that doesn't really involve that much of a client interaction or very little. So that way they don't really know, the client doesn't really know if someone's working on it. But then there's only still so much we could do to delegate in the client work with us still being involved in the client work and still grow our business. So there comes a time where we have to start delegating that higher level work, that thought process, that strategic thinking, because we can only do so much of it. If you grow your business where you have 5 people that are working directly with clients, but you're still managing all those people and still involved in all that client work at a high level, that's taking a lot of your time and still going to limit your growth. So we need to recognize and move on to say, all right, I got a good execution team, but where's the leadership in my business? Where's all the strategic thinking? And if that's all still on your plate, then that's the opportunity to grow your business even farther by getting that first level of management, by getting those strategic thought process positions in your business so you can really elevate yourself to be that higher CEO of your organization.
I agree. And one of the biggest mistakes I've seen people make, including myself, is somehow, and I know this logically is not true, but I still operate under this behavior. You know how like we just go like, how do you not read my mind? Like so obvious, right? But it's one of the biggest struggles I've had is I've hired tactical people and I somehow expect them to also direct their own strategy in a way. Like you'll hire the tactical worker to, let's say, go post the social media posts, right? And then but they're not tracking performance. They're not telling you how the performance is going, and they're not really setting a vision or telling you what content that they think they should be creating, or they're not really directing any of that. They're just doing what you say, and you feel like, I'm not even saving any time because I'm telling you literally what to do. And guess what? You didn't hire for that. You hired someone that you direct, and that actually doesn't, it alleviates your work on the execution front, but you're spending just as much time now in directing them. And until you hire someone else that can direct them, you're not really able to absolve yourself that responsibility.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I see this a lot, especially in small businesses when it comes to, let's say, the marketing role and everything, that they're like, I want the person that's going to post the social media. I want the person that's going to create the content. I want the person that's then going to think of the content that's going out. And I don't want to be anywhere involved with it. And I want to hire one person. And it's like, okay, well, sometimes if you find someone who's grown up in the small business realm and they're used to doing that in another job, and they started with the tactical execution and then their responsibilities grew, you might find someone that's willing to do all of that. But the people that are really good at that strategy, they no longer want to do that execution work because that's not their zone of genius. They want to use their minds, not their hands type thing. So you really need to sometimes look at it and separate roles. And that is sometimes like where people, I feel like, get stuck because they're like, I need 40 hours of marketing help. It has to be one role, one marketing person. And I remember having a conversation with a client a few months ago where I said, your role is two very different roles. You can hire one person that does both of these things at a mediocre level, or you can split the role into two and have one person that's really good at the execution and one person that's really good at the strategy. And then you have two part-time team members that are excelling versus one full-time team member that is okay and maybe meeting your expectations, but needing a lot of hand-holding in one of the areas.
And also typically, I find that in that scenario that you just laid out, where you have the one mediocre team member, they tend to gravitate to one versus the other, and they may be better at one versus the other, but you can't half fire them. So when you actually have those two roles, you can isolate the performance of the execution and the strategy, where then you can make changes to those roles without interrupting the other flow. Because I find when you also put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, with one person, then when you choose to remove that person, you're removing all of the responsibilities associated with them and having to retrain up all of them to the next person as well, which can be more disruptive in the long run.
Yes, that's an excellent point. But another example that I can give here is I often see this happening in businesses when it comes to the delegating is they're like, how do I hire as few people as possible? Okay, I need my assistant. So I'm going to hire my assistant. And because they answer phones, I'm going to give them a sales responsibility because they talk to people. So they're going to have a sales responsibility. So they're going to be my admin and they're going to be my salesperson. And those things should fill their time. And I was like, you cannot do that. Sales is its own unique thing. And yes, there's going to be people in your business that influence sales. Maybe that can help with client retention. But when it comes to new sales, that is its own special thing. Yes, as business owners, we do it all, but not all your other team members are going to have the ability to do it all. Because I can also say as a business owner, we're probably not good at it all. We're just required to do it all. And so with that team member, one of two things are going to happen. They're going to hate the sales. They're going to struggle with the sales, and they're going to put that off as much as possible. And then you're going to be frustrated because they're not selling and they're really focusing on the admin. And you're not going to really focus on what they're doing well. You're going to focus on what they're not doing well, which is they're not bringing in that revenue and securing that revenue for your business. But then the opposite could be true. And they're going to be really good at sales and they're going to get that positive feedback. And it's like, wow, look at that revenue you brought in. Congratulations. Way to go. You secured us another client. You know, our revenue is going up. We're going to give you a bonus because you helped us hit these goals and things like that. And then they become salesperson, which means all their admin responsibilities that they really don't have time for are going to start slipping. And at first, you're not going to care because they're bringing in that revenue and you're seeing those numbers and you're happy. And then you're going to realize that huge pile of back work. Okay, that client gets sold to. Well, who's sending them the things that need to be sent to that client? Oh, your admin is supposed to be helping with that. Who's scheduling the meetings? Oh, wait, your admin is supposed to be helping with that. And they're always behind because they're talking to the next person that they're trying to sell to. And there's that thing. It's like you're cheering them on in one area. You're at first letting them slip in the one area because you like the sales. And then you're also in this problem where they're only doing one part of their role well, and the other part is getting pushed under the rug as much as possible.
I agree. And you think that you can like find this Jack or Jane of all trades. And again, you're going to get somebody who is a C plus at a bunch of things. And I just find that it's no different. Like you're hiring a person, or it's even softwares and other resources in your business where like if they're trying to be everything, they can't possibly have excellence at all of these different things. You need to have
Right.
specialists in certain areas if you want to drive results. You can go an inch in 10 different areas, or you can go a mile in one.
Right.
And that's what's really important to keep in mind. And I think that we all try to like create the process that's easier for us by hiring the one person, but then it's like, what does your business actually need? And unfortunately, I mean, and you tell me if this exists, I don't think it does, but I wish there was like a roadmap or like an IKEA instruction manual on like, what do I need to hire first? What's the first part that plugs into what? And then what do I do? I feel like that was always a blank canvas for me of like, I need help, but I don't know what to call this person. And I don't know what to delegate. What do you do when business owners are in that zone?
Ooh, yes. It would be so helpful if it was a one size fits all approach. It's like always like the first person you should hire in your business is going to do this, and they're going to be this title, and you do this and your revenue is going to take off. That's not true. Like it's not a one size fits all approach. It's going to depend on your business. It's going to depend on your skills. It's going to depend on the services and everything that you offer. So when clients come to me and they're like, I need help, I'm drowning, because a lot of times we wait till we're drowning to recognize that we need help. They're like, but I don't know who to hire. I don't know what help I need. I just need somebody. And I'm like, well, we're not going to hire just somebody, because then we're probably going to hire the wrong person, because we need to get the right person into your organization. So I was like, we're going to work through a few steps to figure out who it is that you need. And the first thing I say is, I want you to create a list. That list is going to consist of everything you hate doing in your business, everything that you put on a to-do list that you never get to. If you had a choice between task A and task B, what is always task B that you're never going to get to, that you're always going to put off? If there was two of you, things that you could be doing a lot more of in your business that would be making a huge impact on your revenue, things like that, like start creating that list. So it's not everything you do, but those things where you're just like, I'm not doing this at all, or I'm not doing enough of it, or I do hate it. Once you create that list, you're then going to start prioritizing. You're going to look at it to say, what would the ROI be if someone else was responsible for this and not me? And don't worry about, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to train this person. Are they going to do well? A person that is going to succeed by doing this. Like there's going to be no hiccups, no nothing. They're going to succeed doing this. So if you look at that to say, if a person that's really successful is doing this, what is the impact it's going to have on my business? So you need to rank based on that ROI. And some things are going to pop to the top of the list where you're going to say, wow, this has a really big impact on my business. There's going to be a really good immediate ROI. And for some of that, we do have to look at more that immediate return on the investment versus like long term. So obviously, if you have someone come in that's helping you with sales generation, that's going to increase your revenue. But is that really the thing to do if you have good, consistent sales now, but your other things, your execution of the work and stuff is not where it needs to be? So yes, you might have that ROI, but is it going to hurt your business if you focus on that, if you put that before another task on your list? So once you really see what is going to have the most immediate positive impact, that then it also has a positive long-term impact, those are the things where you need to start with delegating first. The things that you need to get off your plate, the things that need to get done, but you're not doing them right now. Or the things that you are doing, but you're not doing enough of. So those are the places where you start first. Once you start with those things that you definitely need to get off your plate, you can look at the rest of the list to say, are there similar things that I can combine? So once again, we don't want jack of all trade roles, but if you realize throughout your list, you have a bunch of different marketing execution type tasks, well, it doesn't matter if one is first, second, third, and the other one is 20th on the list. Pull that one up that's 20th if you can afford that bigger role and everything. So you can start combining tasks that make sense. And that's the role that you're going to hire for. Now, with small businesses, there's this thing of, what do I call this? A lot of times our roles are not going to be in direct alignment with more, let's say, corporate or bigger business roles when it comes to titles and roles and responsibilities. So sometimes we do have to get a little bit creative with the title and with the job title. I don't mean we're going to call it unicorn client service juggler or something like that. Creative, like that, things in terms of what words we put out there. But I mean, creative is, who is the type of person that's going to be looking for this role? What are the roles that are currently in right now? And what should I be calling it so the right people are going to see it on a job board? So for example, with this, I had a client years ago that they ran a photo booth company. They were hiring someone that they originally were calling their warehouse manager. With their photo booth, they had a huge warehouse of props and things like that. They created scenes to go with their photo booths for special events and everything. And they're calling it warehouse manager because they're like, they manage everything at the warehouse that goes on in the warehouse before it goes to the event. And I was like, well, warehouse manager isn't really the right title because yes, it makes sense when you think about it from one side, but who are the people that are looking for a warehouse manager jobs? They're not looking to build sets. They're not looking to manage like props and stuff like that. Like that's not what they're looking for. They're looking to manage maybe workers in a warehouse that are dealing with inventory and like all these other things and shipments and stuff like that. So I said, well, the roles and responsibilities that this person is going to do, let's just go to Indeed and start looking at other jobs to say what jobs have these roles and responsibilities. And the title that we ended up coming up with was a title that is used in the theater world for someone that helps create sets, who manages props and all those things like there. They never thought of that because they're not in the theater. That is not their industry, but that was the type of person they needed. And once we started using the title that actually aligned with the work instead of the title we thought it should be, we got great candidates to that opening.
Yeah, that I think it's so important to acknowledge that that there are ways to effectively delegate, but B, there's ways that once you identify what it is you need to delegate and who you need for that role, that it's not a copy paste job description and like you build it, they will come. Like there is a method, and it really is a skill like marketing. You're marketing talent to come work for you. So you have to be clear about what exactly you have to offer and what your personality is, what your values are, and what it is you're looking for them to do. That's a great example though with the warehouse manager that you just covered, where it's like, well, who is going to be attracted to that? Like who's going to be Googling warehouse manager jobs, right? What is that person, like what is that sort of avatar of the employee? And that kind of parallels into a really good conversation I want to have on hiring the right person, because I have been there. I have hired the wrong person 16 different times. I really have. And it feels like dating. I feel like Carrie Bradshaw dating in New York City when it comes to hiring, where I'm like, why do I find myself in these situations? And then it really does put a mirror on you and says like, okay, what are you looking for? And how clear are you about what you want? Let's talk about the people who aren't. Personally, I find clarity comes in contrast. So clarity comes for me in terms of really dissecting why this person was the wrong hire and being very intentional about making it clear of what your expectations are and what you're looking for. But without hiring the wrong person several times, what are some of the tips that you have, Jamie, on how to get that clarity when you don't have that contrast? Like you haven't hired the wrong person yet, and you're kind of taking a stab in the dark on what you're looking for.
Yeah. So Shannon, I love that you brought that up, because that is one of the things that we always ask when some of our clients come to us. If they've hired before, we say, why didn't people work out? But the thing about that is that's really learning a lot through trial and error. And trial and error gets expensive. And I will be honest, most everybody that was responsible for hiring in a corporate setting learned through trial and error. And guess what? The dime wasn't on them as the individual, it was on the organization. So no one did anything about it. But corporations lose so much money because they don't train people how to hire. And we don't have that ability to lose that money in a small business because we feel it. So we can't rely on trial and error. And we really need to do the things to teach ourselves and learn how to hire right from the start, from that very first person. And you mentioned it's a lot like dating. And it really is. I think I recently, as we're going to record this, put something out, I think sent to my email list that it is a lot like dating. But the thing is, you want to date the person before you marry them, and think of once you give them a job offer, it's like you're proposing to marry them. So how do you date the candidate before you ever get to that point where you're proposing? And the thing about it is obviously we live in a world now where a lot of people are meeting each other through online dating. So let's just use that example. So the first thing you have is the job posting. That's what you put out there. That's your dating profile. You're telling people exactly what it is that you want in a new team member. You're telling them who you want in an employee. So it's like you're saying, this is the type of person that I want to connect with. So you want to be clear. You want your job posting to speak directly to your ideal candidate. So someone is reading that and saying, yes, they just described me. Oh my gosh, I want to work here. Like, this is the idea job for me. Just like when someone reads your dating profile, you want them to say, yeah, like I really want to get to know this person. At the same time, another person's going to read that and say, no, that job's not a fit. Like they are not the right company for me to go to. So I'm going to pass. I'm going to deselect myself from the process and I'm going to go to another opportunity. So that's what we want from that first thing. Well, from the candidate side, their dating profile is their resume. So we're going to look at their resume and we're going to determine, do we see enough of a fit for a conversation? And just like with dating, we're not marrying someone based off their dating profile. We are saying, you are worthy of that first date conversation. You are worthy of us getting together one time and having that interaction to see, are you really the person that you put on your profile? And that's what both sides are looking for. Is the way I'm interpreting this really right? So that brings us to the next step, which is the interviews. There should always be 2 rounds of interviews, at least. I would say no more than 3, but at least 2. Just like you're not going to propose to someone after a first date. You're going to have that time of getting to know each other. So that first interview is typically going to be short. Just like in the dating world, we don't go a weekend away the first time we meet someone. It's typically we go and we meet in a safe environment where we have the ability to escape and end it if we see that there's not a fit. So a short interview provides that. You want to just ask basic questions to make sure that they are who they say they are and that they have the basic skills and experiences to move on to the next conversation. Every question you ask should be connected to that idea candidate. Who is going to be successful at the job? Okay, if this person's going to be successful at the job, how do I identify if this person that I'm talking to is that person who's going to be successful? So we're not looking, you don't want any like generic interview guides. Really the worst thing you can do, or what are the best interview questions to ask, like type searches through Google, because it's not going to give you any information about your business, your candidate that you're looking for. So then after that first interview, you go into that second interview. That's when you really dig deeper into some questions. You go into those topics that you didn't go into the first interview, and you really learn more about someone to identify, do I want to take this next step? Do I want to invite them to be on my team? Because you got to know them during the interview process and you got to know the right things about them during the interview process.
Love it. So I got a question for you too on the 2 rounds of interviews, which I agree with. Do you have a ballpark of like a percentage of how many you should interview versus how many applied? Like how many interviews you should go through for a role, as either in relation to the application volume or, how do you know enough is enough?
When you find your right person. It is one of those things that's it's hard when you're fearing delegating and you're fearing making the wrong decision and things like that. But one of the things I always train my clients on is a candidate doesn't get better or worse because you interview somebody else. So we really need to evaluate each person on an individual level. So when we look at how many people you should bring into that first interview, you should bring in anybody that's qualified for that first interview. Now, the caveat there is you only have so much time. So if you have 30 people that qualify for that first interview, then you're going to do some deselecting and everything beforehand and bring in maybe the top 10 to interview at first, and then dig deeper, go into the rest of those people that you said seem to be qualified for additional interviews if needed. When it goes on to that second interview, we're not looking at specific numbers. We're saying who passed that first interview. And maybe, once again, you're going to say, I only have so much time. So maybe I only want to start with interviewing 3 people. And then I'll keep these other 3 people as maybes in case one of them ends up not being the right person. Because once again, we're going to dive into deeper questions. We're learning new things. We're not learning the same things. But you don't want to say, gosh, this person really didn't do too well in this interview, but I need to bring in a fifth person to my second round interviews. So I'm going to put them in there. No, if they don't pass the first interview, they don't pass the first interview. For one of my clients, they had one candidate that they moved to that second round interviews, and they loved this candidate and they hired this candidate, but they were so hesitant at first because they were sitting there saying, but I've only interviewed one person. And it was a recruiting client of ours. So we did the first round interview. So they didn't talk to any of those candidates. But I had to remind her, I was like, but we talked to 20 candidates on your behalf. This is the best, I wouldn't say this is the best person because that's not the way I want to look at it. Is like, this person is fully qualified based on the interview we did. And now you did an interview and you agree that they're fully qualified. So why are you going to waste your time doing more interviews if you already found the person that you want to hire and they prove that they have the ability to do the job?
Yeah, because we're given the advice all the time to hire slow, fire fast. But the hire slow advice, I always go, am I hiring slow enough? Like, do I want to give more time? Do I want to be more patient? Do I want to see? And it really is like dating. It's kind of like, just go on the weekend trip with the guy and see what happens. Like, you seem like a good match. Like, what could go wrong? You know, worst case scenario, you come back here and you call those, you know, maybes that you had and you go back into the pool. But I think that people are too hesitant to take these risks because they perceive, like you said, it's a big cost to hire the wrong person. So they're really hesitant. But at the same time, I do think that people will wait until they're drowning, right? And they go, I just need a warm body who can take direction. And that's not good enough. I have been there. I have done that. It is not a good idea because you are also clouded in your judgment because you're like, they seem capable. And if you don't have any criteria or report card to go off of that's objective, you're going to go off of your feelings in that moment when you're hungry in the grocery store. Because you're going to buy all the food when you're hungry in the grocery store. So if you're interviewing people and you're like, this person could help me like tomorrow, this is amazing. You're hired. Let's do this. You get so excited. And then you go, yeah, I really should have taken my time with that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really where like the hiring slowly comes into. It doesn't mean you don't make decisions. It doesn't mean you drag your feet. It doesn't mean you hold off on candidates you know are fully qualified. It means you don't make snap decisions and bring someone in that's not qualified because you didn't do your due diligence. So if you're doing your due diligence during the process and you know what you're looking for and you know how to uncover the right information, you don't have to have a 6-month hiring period. You don't have to delay it. You know, because I've had a client in the past that refused to make decisions. And he kept saying, well, if they're the right person, they'll wait for me to make my decision. But that person on the other side needs a job and you might be their number one choice and they want to work for you. But if you're taking 2 months to make a decision, they're going to say, I don't trust that you're ever actually going to make me an offer. So I'm going to have to go with my number 2 choice because they're making me an offer.
Yeah. And I think that all of this comes with the asterisk of depending on what the job market is like, because there was a time period, I want to say last year, the year before, where if you really liked somebody, you basically had to put an offer in really quickly for that person because the job market was so scarce. At least in my field in accounting, it was like you had to pick up somebody as soon as they were a qualified fit. You basically had to say, hey, look, I have the intention of giving you an offer. Just like, I need you to go through this process. I lost so many people because of even a day I took too long to respond. And they said, oh, I already found something. It was happening so rapidly. So you also have to pay attention to the market pace of how you have to kind of be driving at the same speed of traffic, you know, and be able to safely hire those people at the right time. But I want to talk about like, so when you're hiring these people and you're evaluating them, just random thought, second round interview, we do a practical case study. Do you recommend doing anything like that and getting a little creative beyond questions? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing that?
Yeah, so I will say it depends. So there are some clients that we help them create case studies, mini projects, things like that to really test something. But there are a lot of times when clients are saying, well, I want to give them sample work, so I want to see what they're doing. I want to see how they can do this. We determine that it's not really needed because we can really find out all the information that we need based on asking the right interview questions. But I do feel like there are some things where we need to dig a little bit deeper. And sometimes I find it's those higher level strategic roles where then sometimes we need to test that strategic ability, that strategic thought process of, okay, they said the right things. They can give us examples when they were involved in similar things in the past, but how much was them versus how much was like a collaborative effort with everybody else that was on the team for that strategic thought process. So
Right.
we really look at to say, what can we not identify through interview questions that that's really important that we need to know? And the reason why we approach it that way is we have to be respectful of the candidate on the other side as well. Our hiring process shows candidates what it's like to work for us. So if we demand a lot of stuff that the candidate doesn't feel is important, doesn't feel like there's value in those steps, those candidates are going to be like, I don't want to work here. They're going to overwork me. They're not going to value me, and more of those things. So we want to make sure our experience creates a positive experience for the candidate. We want to make sure that they're thinking of us as, yes, I would want to work for this boss. This makes sense. So we want to limit making them do extra work if we don't need them to do that extra work. But there are some positions where the extra work is needed. And so then how do we approach it where we feel like, where the candidate feels like we're not taking advantage of them? Because some of the things you'll see is there's candidates out there that say, well, they wanted me to do about 20 hours of work where I was going to hand them a finished project, where guess what? They could go and run with that without me and not hire it. So it's like they're almost getting free work from me, and candidates are pushing back on that. So we want to make sure it doesn't feel like we're getting free work from the candidate, that we're really testing the candidate to make sure that they're the right fit.
Yeah. And I think that the most important thing is that if you're going to require something like that, and I've done this in my job descriptions and my application processes as well, and interviews, is they have to directly tie to a specific outcome that you want, or a specific value or a specific trait or skill that you are searching for. So it's almost like an audition versus the interview, if you are needing that to be demonstrated in order to hire the person. So I've hired bookkeepers before, as an example. And I say, like, are you good at bookkeeping? Obviously, they're going to say yes. Yes. That's a stupid question. But if I say are you experienced at bookkeeping? You have experience with this? Of course, they're going to say yes. They're not going to say no. I have no idea what I'm doing in a QuickBooks file. However, what I can do is say, I'm going to pull up a profit and loss. I want you to tell me immediately. It's like, those word search puzzles people post, and they go, what are the first 3 words you see? Right? I go, I want you to tell me the first 3 problems you see with this. And that is very intimidating and very high pressure. However, that is what they're going to have to do on a daily basis. Yeah. So in a way, I say, like, take your time. Let's talk through it, however you want to process it. But not only am I seeing if they can do that, I'm also seeing how they process the problem, how they work, how they solve problems. I'm like, you can ask me any questions. You can, I just want to see how you react to this and how you best work. And actually, I got feedback now that they're hired with me, and they go, that was actually that was actually a really good exercise, because it made me even get aware about how I work and how what questions I have and how I communicate. So it was a really fun process. We do stuff like that, or make people submit Loom videos with the job application, because that Loom is a big tool that we use here. I said, you have to be comfortable on video. So I want you to send in the answers to these 2 questions in a video. And there are people who wouldn't do it. I mean, accountants. Like, do you know how hard it was, Jamie, to find accountants willing to answer questions on video? But that filtered a ton of people out that otherwise were too uncomfortable to do that. So I think there's advantages to it, but I also think that, you can filter out a lot of people, and that can be good and bad.
Yeah. And that's one thing, like you just mentioned the Loom videos. And that is one of the things that I always say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So if you're able to get good candidates going through that process, keep it. But if you're putting something similar, for those listening, you're putting something similar in your process and you're like, I'm not getting quality candidates, you need to look at, is there something in my process that's turning off good quality candidates? So right. For some people, they're not going to submit that video, not because they're not comfortable on camera, but they're going to say, we haven't even had a first conversation yet. I don't know if I really want to work with you. So we haven't had that first date, but now you're asking me all these personal questions and you're asking me to give you all this time and stuff. And I don't know if you're worth it. So why am I going to do this work for you when you haven't respected me by giving me any of your time yet? So sometimes we want to make sure that we're putting those kind of tests or things in the right place. There are clients where, they're going to be communicating with people a lot through through video conference and everything. So I'm like, well, then make sure your first interview is a video conference. Don't have them come into the second interview. And I once had a candidate that said, I'd really prefer to be a phone interview versus a video interview. Can we do that? And I said, no, not for this position. And they explained that it just made them really nervous to be on camera. And I said, this position requires you to be on camera. So if that is something that really bothers you and you can't do it, then this isn't the right position for you. So we were able to use that as, let's determine if these candidates are right. But sometimes when we expect too much for them too quickly, it can turn off good candidates because they're like, I don't know if you're worthy of me doing that work yet.
Yeah. It's almost like a first date where you're asking them to bring something with them.
Yeah.
And it's
can you bring your wedding plans on a first date? Like, can you bring all your financials so I know if you're financially sound, if we could buy a house together in 3 years, like things like that. There's stuff that you don't do on a first date because it's too personal.
And I think that you make a good point too, and this is something we try to be conscious of too, is that when it comes to the job market, like now I'm an elder millennial, geriatric millennial. I hate that term, but I'm a geriatric millennial. And we got the short end of the stick on two fronts. One is when we were coming up, we had to basically fight for jobs. Like we had to impress the employer. Now we are the employers. And guess what? Now we have to impress the employees. We don't get the easy side ever. We've never had our pick of the litter, if you will, in either role. And what's interesting is I have spent a large amount of time learning how to be an attractive employer. And this is something that gets really missed a lot in the interview process is, well, what are you doing to make people want to work for you? Because it's not just good enough, millennials, that you exist and people will just apply because of the privilege to work for your company. It's like, what do you have to offer these candidates that align with their values, and how are you showcasing that? Do you agree?
Oh, I 100% agree. I just last week, it's not live yet. I'm sure it'll be live, but possibly by the time this goes live, recorded a reel that will go live on my Instagram about you're not special. You know, you and your job are not special. Like you can't people aren't just going to be lining up to work for you and willing to jump through all the hoops that you put out there just because you're you. You know, that you need to make sure you're respecting the candidate and everything throughout the process. And selling the candidate just as much as they're selling you.
Yeah, it's so important. And knowing what they're going to be attracted to, right? Especially like I think about accounting and I go, don't tell them about the 50-hour work weeks. Tell them about, like your culture and what you do and what types of clients you serve and how you make an impact, right? Not just the mechanics of what's expected of them. Like if you work here, this is what I need you to do. It's like, well, what am I going to get out of this experience besides a paycheck? And if you're only focused on what's expected of them, then that could be a turnoff in and of itself, even if everything is totally realistic and totally in line with what they would normally see. It's just, you have to kind of be fighting for their attention too.
Yes, exactly. Now you do have to tell them what's expected. If it's a 50-hour work week, yes. If they're working nights and weekends,
for sure.
Yes, make sure you're clear on that. But yeah, exactly. You need to tell them, what are they going to get? And I think that's really important. Just a quick example. One of my clients, they ran a really, really small business. It was a nonprofit. The way the nonprofit was running, they knew that they were not going to have significant growth. They didn't care about significant growth. So they knew that this was a step on people's career roadmap and not the place where they're going to stay forever. And so their thing when they were going through the hiring process is saying that is like, there is no internal growth here. However, if you are here 2 to 3 years, I will help you find your next opportunity. And here are a bunch of people you can talk to that I've done that for in the past, because I need you to be a great talent while you're here, but I recognize that you're not going to be here forever. So give me everything for 2, 3 years, and then we can move on and I will help you move on.
I love that. I love that honesty too, because it's like, you can't reasonably expect people to be fully committed and like want to marry you, like you said, on the second date and just go, let's just see how this goes. Like we'll move in together, we'll go on a weekend, we'll move in together and then we'll see where things go. And I think expecting more than that is unrealistic and it's going to set you up for disappointment as an employer too.
Right. Exactly.
I agree. So Jamie, tell me more about how folks can get in touch with you so we can share that with them and they can learn more from you if they're looking to hire.
Yes. So if you are sitting there saying hiring is one of those things you need to do next, it's on your roadmap for this year, then let's schedule a time to talk. I can help you figure out what those right next steps are for your business in order to either prepare for hiring or to start the hiring process. And if there's alignment with what we do here at Growing Your Team, tell you more about how we can support you. If not, at least get you prepared for what you need to do inside your organization. So you can schedule a call with me by going to growingyourteam.com/jumpstart, with jumpstart being all one word.
Amazing. And that link will be in the show notes, guys. Just have to scroll down and click that link to schedule a call with Jamie and her team. Jamie, thank you so much for your time today. This is an awesome conversation. I love talking about this.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.